What does the abstract self imply? Why is there in existence the consideration of an evolving self? How is the awareness from the evolution of one position to another position occur? Since 2014, my eyes have been opened up, or I can say the eyes of my mind, or let me say it even in a better way. It's as if my eyes turned around like 180 degrees and they saw that which was more the presence of attention and how it was spacious, how it was like space, and how there was matter in the space. So, in other words, I have a relationship with the sense of self, with my sense of self, as if it is oscillating between the void and between a shape. And I find this to happen in every moment, in every instant where the human being blinks, there is suddenly a lessening of data. And it's like I kind of saw it as if, like, on a shore, imagine on the beach, something is written on the sand, and suddenly a wave hits it and it clears it up. It smooths out what was written on the sand. And so I kind of see as if reality is being sculpted through conscious moments and unconscious moments. And the conscious moments we have identified through objective individual living. That means right now I am speaking to you as an individual in a civilization that acknowledges individuals. However, the voice of nature doesn't belong to shape, and it suddenly opens up this dimension that intelligence can transcend the methods and modes that we acknowledge it. I thought about how there was an emergence of a conscious reception of self, as if when we look at evolution, we kind of consider that there has been an unconscious movement of nature. Nature wasn't aware of itself. It became aware of itself first objectively, hence the objective evolution, where it suddenly noticed, the creature noticed it is separate. It is separate from the physical environment. It didn't even notice it was separate. It was as if legs emerged, limbs emerged, and limbs allowed the creature to move in the setting. So it's as if kind of like history is the process of how nature became a character. Evolution is character development. What it is, the character development through the emergence of a conscious attention to space. So I can say that we as creatures evolved not just becoming aware of matter, but becoming aware that matter is in a space. And hence the subjective evolution emerged. I find it's like first the creature was separate from the earth, so it began to see that its physicality is separate. Then that moment where the creature looked at itself in the pond and attained, acknowledged individualism. So, on some level, yes, I do see human beings. I see different personalities. I see different people having, every person having their DNA being different. But ultimately, when I see in regards to action wise, I see efforts of attention. And so an abstract self implies the presence of attention, or how your attention is present, or why the sense of a subjectivity is in the air. Human beings do not just require for their survival to build relationships. In other words, not only are you a social creature, but you are a social creature in an evolving society, and in a society that evolves as much as its members do. So you can say the classrooms around in the educational system are not working properly. because they should create it in a very playful way where the classroom educates itself. Now, what do I mean by this? The more people there are, the more versions of Earth are dwelling on a sort of, you can say, the subjective realm. It's 8 billion human beings. It like answers like a riddle. How do you make 8 billion versions of the Earth? Our inner realms, we have been as beings dishonored. We have been told that our inner realms are, how can I tell you, not crucial. When I went towards mysticism, and my eyes opened up to, for example, the Upanishads, the Vedas, the sutras of Buddha, and various other ideas. It's as if when you kind of look at history, it's the garden of shapes. And some of these shapes are given dynamism by certain people in history. That means when you really look at civilization, I consider it's being piloted. It's just human beings are being born, they're caring for it, and they're doing something. And ultimately, your work becomes as eternal as your trust. And I'm using the word eternal here poetically, not literally. Because to be an eternal being in a temporary world, there's an impossibility. Because the temporary needs the idea of the eternal, and the eternal needs the idea of the temporary. They're codependent. They're like night and day. It's like, how can you have a definition of night without the light of day? So you see the codependence of the ideology. So the sense of an abstract self is only being considered because there is a body that can be moved. Fundamentally, you can experience reality in this plane of existence as an act, being oriented through a subjective consideration, or you might not believe this, but you can you can be your whole moment as a being. And this leads to, there was playfully in this show I would see as a kid, it was the notion of ultra instinct. And of course, this was in the evolution of the show. It was this Japanese show. But the idea was that the person had reached a level of mastery, a level of achievement in the skill of existing, that their movements became intuitive, became innate. So it's as if perfection is a world without doubt, you know? And when human beings that are oscillating between the known and the unknown, they were given ideology, this ideology, it's as if kind of like enter the store, and you'll enter this store of this belief, and how can I tell you? You'll be safe. Reality is not just a, you don't how are you? Okay, let me find my words here. Free will is at least internally navigating how, if even if there is a divine will, it moves. So you see, human beings are multi-layered. There is something that's happening, and they say this is the world before you were born, and it's the same world as after the person passes away. So it's like the life before the dash between the birth and the death of the being. So there's a life before you were born. There was something here before you were born. And there will be something here after you die, pretty much. And now there was another world, the world where you were born in. And the world you were born in, you can say your DNA, I'm using this as a playful metaphor, but your DNA is like a chemical reacting with the chemical of the world. So, in other words, our experience of the world is a change of the world. We are like two chemicals that no longer can be separate. So experience is a sense of infusion of the inner dimension with the outer, or the inner realm with the outer realm. I find that beauty is a great teacher. And in my youth, when I was like young, like 7 years old, I remember me and my brother, my parents would work, and me and my brother would spend time at my grandmother's house a lot. And my grandmother, to give you an idea of what kind of beautiful being she is, she was raised in an Islamic culture, and she was a grandmother that since childhood was just kindness, pure kindness. And I remember that when she would make dinner and food for me and my brother, I have a twin brother, when we were both young, when she would make food, her commentary on the food was not that it tastes good, not that it's like it's unique or it's a certain texture or style. She would say, "Eat this food, it's beautiful." And it was such a remarkable use of language, that it was as if what was pleasant to the experience of the human being had a beauty, and that beauty was beyond any sort of division of and segmentation of an idea. It was as if like later on, it not then when I was 7, but like I don't know, a couple years ago, suddenly her the way she would say this food is beautiful or this is beautiful made me realize beauty is all pervading. But what is beauty in nature? And that's when I saw the chaos and order of reality. That was for the first, I don't want to say that time, but like these kind of realizations, cognitions led me into seeing that reality was, it's like on some level, yes, objectively, it looks like an engine. It's like we're in a kind of biological simulation of existence. Okay, but on another level, there was a mysterious beauty. It was as if it did not reject the unknown. It was as if somebody saying, this food is like good or bad. It's as if there was a duality there. But the word beautiful, it was as if any person, imagine when somebody says this is beautiful, you would look at how you have experienced beauty. So by her saying that food was beautiful, it's as if my mind would consider beauty, and with those emotions instantly evoked, I would eat the food. Our minds are fascinating mysteries. They're like Rubik's cubes, where how we live becomes the algorithm to them. And how we live in accordance and I can say with an abidance with one's nature. You see, the concept of meditation, which many people use as an antidote to their chaos, it's like many people seek meditation because, hey man, I could feel a bit more relaxed. But meditation is really, I'm saying mysticism is not for the faint of heart. That meditation they teach you at your local mall is very different than that meditation of that Himalayan yogi, because one is willing to see beyond the limit, the other just wants to just have the suffering calm down. You see, it's maintenance. It was this cool thing. When I realized the potential of the mind provides an opportunity for consciousness to feel that it is causing the world, or it can also simultaneously feel the world is causing it. So I'm saying that we have been conditioned to think that we're just material objective beings because that is what we see. But who said the eyes were the only source of the truth? The eyes are beautiful. They are a beautiful development of evolution. But what the eyes, it's not just with, it's like sensory data is being attracted. It is being attracted to why the heart is beating. And why the heart is beating is like an unknown portal. And so that's what I'm trying to communicate. That was what really fascinated me about the wilderness of the mind. It was like at some point in this life, I sat down and I was like, what if everything that everyone has said and every way I have kind of received what they have said is flawed? Not that it's flawed, that it's hollow. So when I began kind of wondering about the hollowness of language, I began to discover the only thing that I could not doubt was the instantaneity of being. And what I mean by that is that I recognize I cannot have doubt in an instant. And what is this proof we seek? What is this proof that we want? It's an instant of acknowledgement. And so I began to see that I have been considering, like, I felt like I had only, I was in a multidimensional world, but I had limited myself to just a certain one way of receiving it. And that was kind of like, it was a very cool moment to realize that you don't know yourself. It's one of those moments where the unknown is smiling because the being has enough humility to acknowledge what they truly know, and what then when they acknowledge what they truly know, then what the don't know gets your I don't knows get there. How can I say, they get moved by the unknown. That means it's hilarious. We are particles in a field of intelligence, and our comprehension of our evolution has been that this particle's been changing. But I am telling you, we are realizing that the ocean is alive. And as Rumi says, this ocean of intelligence is all of us. I am telling you, my heartbeat is happening in the same moment as your heartbeat. Yet we are in different parts of the sphere. So, in some sense, it's the realization that the human body is individual, but the human mind is collective. And if the human mind is collective, it means it's a shapeless self. It means there is a shapeless civilization going on. That means it's as if the world is veiled by our own ignorance. And so the veil of thought was the veil of how much the person felt just in a sequence of language it could be held. Reality is more than the laws or of something happening. For me, ultimately, you can even be very simple about knowledge, and you can say it's behavioral. It's like we're all behaviorists at the end of the day. How we, how can I say it? How we move allows what we see. And so Mr. Within is simply trying to take the attention of the species to the inner sensitivity of how language is an advanced technology, but it is not us. And when we realize how we can use it's kind of being, it's like you have your hands, you have your physical body, but this is not the only thing you have. You have awareness. Now, what is awareness? If your eyes are open, it comes across as a spherical, as an endless spherical kind of expansion. Okay, so like that means it's like the same way as, like, good luck measuring the sky with a ruler. Life, is simply a movement of forces, and I find that the cause and effect are simultaneous if we consider them as separate dimensions. But if we treat them all, both the cause and effect, in a singular dimension, that means in my own developments of kind of trying to interpret the dimensions of this world experientially, I found a way to use mathematical language to kind of simply explain how the pilot can navigate in this plane of existence. You see, I say 0, 1 to infinity. And guys, whoever's listened to a bunch of my talks before, I'm going to repeat what I'm going to say here because it's one of those things that's crucial. So, I mean, in a lot of the other upcoming talks, this idea will be shared. 0, 1 to infinity, these four symbols are crucial to remember. It's as if the intelligence of the being requires to acknowledge the space, the void, and emptiness and nothingness before moving. So be comfortable with stillness, be comfortable with silence, be comfortable with absence, be comfortable with emptiness, be comfortable with all sorts of vanishing points. This is crucial for multidimensional piloting. So you got to first be comfortable with nothing. Then you can have everything. So the zero dimension. Then we go on to the one dimension. The one dimension is how, after you're comfortable with space, you're comfortable with a single thing existing in this space. Or that's when suddenly the being starts even getting the ability to see oneness. So it's kind of not like you got used acquainted with nothingness. You're like, oh, nothingness, cool. Then you went up to something. The first thing. So the singular mind opens up to you at that point. So you can acknowledge objects. This is kind of like the development of individual consciousness. You can see how you're an object. You can see how you're an individual. You can see how others are individuals. You can see how there's a space between the words. You can acknowledge separate letters in a word. This is becoming acquainted with the singular dimension. Most likely, everybody is so far. I feel it's just naturally everybody's acquainted with the singular. Because we're creatures that are social, so society is based on a lot of singular stuff moving around. Sometimes for me, the randomity of the marketplace, of just even the concept of the economy of a nation, it's like various wild beasts are living in the same room, in the same jungle. This is why I like the concept, the idea of the concrete jungle. It's not a concrete jungle because we made concrete over jungles. It's the concrete jungle because the mind is still beast-like, and the evolution of the grand human being, the advanced communicator, which I say is the epitome. It's not the epitome, but it's like it's a very it's required that we become now defined by our ability to communicate, which requires our direct experience rather than just remaining dormant. So, what I'm noticing is that so many people on this planet have incredible, their inner lives are incredible, yet they are not being externalized. So I feel the species should attempt towards not a civilization that is good or bad, but creatively efficient. So once one confronts the singular dimension, you begin to see imagination appears as suddenly evocational. So to continue, once you're content with the singular, once you're content with phenomenology existing individually, experientially, then it gets interesting. Now, this is where civilization is at the two dimension. So we confronted the zero dimension, one dimension, and two dimension. And there's a reason I say there isn't a third dimension. It's not that I say there isn't. It's just like after duality, you have access to infinity, so it doesn't matter. The numbers just become meaningless symbols at that point. So now the dualistic dimension arises, and if you've seen a yin yang symbol, you probably know what the dualistic dimension is. The dualistic dimension is how there has been a fragmentation in the moment in regards to value. So suddenly, this is the mind, this is the ability after being able to confront the void and the singular to being able to see the singular into 1 plus 1, for example, equals 2. So it's like the singular self copied itself, and that other self became the world. So what I mean by that is language is a dualistic technology. This is where everything is occurring. This is what we do as human beings in our conscious stage, that we enter the linguistic simulation where there's a character in a world. Anytime there is one phenomena having a relationship with another phenomena, this becomes dualism, you know? So you can say the two dimension, it has two edges. In other words, I'm saying just like how language has a vanishing point, the meaning of our existence has a vanishing point, and it's not one vanishing point. Through the linguistic simulation, there's two vanishing points. These vanishing points means, like, if you were to look at, for example, the design of the human eye, not the eye like your whole eye, not the eyeball, kind of like oval where the edges kind of go to dots. So you see, those two dots are the vanishing point of duality. Do you see what I mean? So what I mean by that is, uh, the edge of the linguistic simulation, it has two edges. One edge is the void, nothing. The other edge is infinity. And that's when the species is moving to. I remember I drew an artwork called Trinfinitum. Trinfinitum. It was like I had drawn three infinity symbols where their edges connected into a triangle. I called that picture, maybe if I can find it, I'll post it for you. I called that Trinfinitum. Maybe I can actually find it. But anyways, let me move on. Or just hang in there, guys. Maybe this is something cool. It's like I gotta make a choice here. Show you the artwork or finish my thought. Okay, I'll speak as I look for this. Um, so guys, just don't mind the clicking sounds. I'm just trying to multitask. So, anyways, there are two edges to. There are two edges to the. Okay, this is not gonna work. Hold on, guys. It's faster this way. Actually, let me just find the artwork. Sorry, guys, just hang in there. I forgot my password to ArtStation. But anyways, let me see if I can find this. So, anyways, guys, sorry about the hold up. Pretty much this concept of the trinfinitum, I'm saying that beyond duality, uh, reality goes to a sort of, I mean, of course, it goes to a vanishing point because infinity cannot be conceived. It just means that the character either becomes part of the eternal, not eternal, becomes part of the endless landscape, or it, in some sense, nullifies itself out of conception. Now, mystical practices were divided between the two. I think Western esotericism sought infinity, and Eastern esotericism sought the void. And I can't find this. That's I think I didn't upload it. It's a shame. Oh wait, wait. I think it's here. Sorry guys, I'm looking for this picture. It has to be here. Oh, there we go. I found it. Oh, trinfinatum. I called it. Perfect. Nice. So guys, I found this. This is it's gonna be cool to show. Okay. So guys, I think I drew this in 2014, 15. Okay, guys, so I found it. So this is I think I've shown it to you upside down. How do I? Okay, just hang on. Hang on. There we go. Updating. Okay, there we go. So yeah, guys, I drew this, and this was the concept of kind of. So I was explaining to you. Let's put it here. I think it would be something here, maybe. Okay. Okay. Um, so yeah, guys, this concept that language is a dualistic dimension, we find ourselves in it. When you look at the yin yang symbol, what you notice is the good and bad are in one circle. In one moment of being, there is chaos and order. The poet Rumi said chaos and order are like the wings of a bird. It requires to fly, and it's the focus of its flight is not just looking at the chaos or the order. So all those people who are just trying, who are looking at the suffering, they kind of fail. And all those people just trying to be happy, they also fail. Because to be in nature does not mean to be in one mode, and the free will, it's like recent. It's as if everything was nature and suddenly some part of nature became aware of itself, and it claimed territory over, it claimed ownership over the space, and so it began building upon it, you know. So guys, this changed everything back. Okay, whatever. Okay, okay, let's okay, I'm gonna forget the pictures. So really when I speak about piloting, I'm speaking about how to navigate the attention starting from an objective reality that is in the one dimension, subjective reality which is in the two dimension, and then we have zero, which is the space of all. So it's as if once a being gets comfortable with duality, with dualism, that and this is how you get comfortable. This is how it's a door to infinity, where I can say it's like the advanced communicators route. That means it's like the best thing you can do with design is help it live. The endurance of efficiency is it's a pillar of civilization that must be defended as this pillar reaches the sky and beyond. Anytime from the zero dimension or the singular dimension, the dualistic dimension is observed, it creates a trio. It becomes triangular. When that triangular emerges, that triangle, forget any sort of connotation you have for the concept of triangle and just think as a geometric shape, like how like Plato would think about it, right? So it suddenly a trio would emerge. So this trio would be an ability just like the three infinity symbols, where it's as if three dimensions of reality, their ultimate connects. So ultimately you become the observer within is the infinite dimension that is witnessing the dualistic. It's technically, the three dimension. So the three dimension is a potential for infinity. So it's like that's what I'm saying. It's like zero dimension, one dimension, two dimension, then the third dimension. Just for the sake of people who want to consider dimension after it, you can say three plus infinity. So it would be like this. Like, let me see if I can type it here. There is, for example, the zero dimension. Then we have, okay, let me see how I could. There we go. There we go. So that's kind of how I would put it in some sort of meaning, the third dimension, so the third dimension, any being who's in it, they're not only just aware of space, they're not just aware of matter, they're also aware of the witness of space and matter, that in order to witness it must have a difference, must have a how can I say it, strangely and sort of inner space between objective phenomena. So just like, for example, you see the words of like a sentences in a book, it's like imagine the space between it to be the inner, and imagine the words to be the outer. You know, it's an inner space and an outer space. So I'm saying eventually there will come a time where all of these merge, and that you can say that when you attain trinfinatum, it's as if it's pretty much you as a human being, because it's like you've seen nothing. That sounded. It's like once you've confronted all the 0D, 1D, 2D, you know, when you reach 3D, that 3D plus infinity is not archetype space. There's one God. You know, you can interpret, for example, uh, there is no one. You could choose not to see the one dimension and just think it's emptiness and duality. You know, the mind can move. This thing that I've kind of said, this thing I've developed here, I feel it can explain a lot of things. And the superior dimensions beyond 3D plus infinity would be. And so, guys, if you don't know what I'm talking about, in the chat section, I've written an equation for what I'm talking about. And it's like 0D plus 1D plus 2D equals 3D plus infinity. It's kind of like I find it's a relationship of concentric spheres, but these spheres are changing rules, you know? And it's like strangely a cycle of it's like attention, if in certain domains of manifestation appears as a shape, but in certain domains of manifestation knows it's like it can you that means in your moment of being you can feel you're the effective shape, or you can feel you're the cause of shape. Anytime you feel that sense of a cause of shape, experience is there. And experience is like really, I mean, how would you, it's like how does a person treat like a bird on a branch, you know? I'm pretty sure like even serial killers, they don't get opinion I thoughts of killing birds, for example. When we see that life is a movement of attention, when we see after 4 billion years of progress, we have an ability to choose. So it means in the simulated realms of our own value, we can choose how to move. But beyond the simulated realms of our own value, the advanced communicators of the realm must find themselves suddenly acknowledging the void again, the unknown. So I feel right now we're experiencing the unknown on an individual level, but to experience the unknown beyond the individualism, that is where the species is going. I'm telling you, it's much further ahead than me and you may be around, but it's like there's going to come a point where I call this the philosophers of the cyberspace culture in the future, maybe like 400 years from now. These philosophers in the cyberspace culture will kind of be like children raised in realities where the narrative is like, am I real or not? Right now, we know we are real. And as beings, we know we are real in regards to organic life, being an organism, a biological being. It's like there's a realness there. It's unavoidable. It's like you're being it, you're breathing, your heart is moving, neurons are uh, going to work on time. Sorry, guys. It's just that once you move beyond the dual, once you observe the dualistic dimension, the fractal reality opens up. The power of the witness to evoke anything. So on some level, yes, your mind can choose to see um, as if you have to find truth in this unknown world, or you can see that the mind is so advanced and it has crystallized through evolution to such a degree where it can move in choice, in conscious choice. So this is why the concept of conscious living was suddenly extremely universal. It's like even like we're going to soon see in Hollywood and in entertainment industry, it will happen. I've hopefully people will read this science fiction novel that I still haven't published yet. But in it, I spoke about the United Nations, and because I've shared my artwork here, guys, I'll say this. My real name is Amin Jabber Ansari, and how can I say it? It's like the smile of the world needs a strangely kind of glorious infinite mask. I find that once you acknowledge these various dimensions of life, inner authorization occurs. Inner authorization is such a. I remember when I had that idea, it was just like it was like hearing Beethoven. Imagine having an idea that is as profound to you as like hearing Beethoven. And so the concept of inner authorization means that if you're not mindful that what you see is not the only thing that's happening, uh, that in other words, like if it, how do I say it? In my youth, for example, this is a perfect example. I was a very quiet and shy kid. And I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe it was kind of like I was meant to walk that path, but it was like I found a way where it was easy for me not to care for the outer realm and just live in my inner realm. So what I mean by that is inner authorization means the cognition, the awareness, the realization that your eyes are not the only thing that's here, and suddenly your true nature, waves of your true nature hit you as you suddenly see the landscape is way more. It's like we're not here to just believe things, to hold ideal, wear language like clothing and think we know things. It's a living thing. It's a dynamic thing. It's like riding a horse. It's like piloting the skies of your vision. It's as profound of a concept where it was as if the person saw that their ancestors believed in angels, in guardian angels, and suddenly wondered how could the guardian angel know? How could the guardian angel know how to guide, where to point? And suddenly the person suddenly took that archetypal position and said it was the future self. This was an idea I had. That in some sense the concept of that the logos, that superior intelligence is us. We are the God in our eyes. you know and this means freedom from the linguistic simulation, not as if, oh my God, you have an ego, stone the ego. We don't want mob mentalities fighting over, abstract ideas. Then it'll be a hilarious, endless struggle. Let me tell you what is worse than war. You know, a war that had no reason to happen ever. That is how can I tell you? It's like some things are meaningless. I'll give you an example of a meaningless war. You know, there was a king in I don't know where exactly, but this king had ordered. Oh, I think it was Greece, ancient Greece, something like that. In ancient Greece, like there was this king, and this king was like suddenly, I think it's some one day it rained too hard or something, and this king is like, yo, I got beef with Poseidon. How dare Poseidon challenge my might? So the king commands his armies, and his armies, he tells his men, he's like, men, you're going on your fiercest battle, you're going on the most intense battle. The king gives a speech that is like pumping up his army to the next level. And the army's like, okay. And eventually one guy says, who's the enemy? And they're all waiting, all pumped up. And the king says, Poseidon. And then the guards get shocked. And he says, we're going to war with Poseidon. And one of the guards is like, imagine, it's like, what does that mean? It's like, we're going to attack the ocean. And this army, motivated with great kind of force, as if they're going fighting against the god, they start hitting ocean waves. Imagine like 200 men with swords attacking the water, hitting water, hitting with a sword water, they're hitting the sea, they're attacking the sea, to kind of, as a sense of the opposite of an offering to a god. And Poseidon was the god of the sea. And if you take the sea very deeply, he was the god of fluidity, the god of fluid change. All the acknowledgement of all the zero, one to infinity dimension system that I've created. Like the like how can I tell you, once you are content with all those ways and modes of perception, then if you choose as a being, because there's a vulnerability in just in like your simpler self, there's a vulnerability that most people fear that vulnerability because they feel it can get hit, like suffering can find it quick. But once you've confronted these dimensions, that means if you were to look at life as a designer, you've seen the various ways it can move. You've acknowledged the vanishing points. So then, regardless of if time is kept for you linearly or non-linearly, you have looked at the modes of design. So what I'm saying is the witness of design is a freedom beyond language. Language is design. The witness of design is watching. It's like, yo, it's like, how can I tell you? It's like common sense, it leads to a moment where what is common and uncommon is being defined. And Mr. Within, like, how can I say it? I'm not telling people to uh, like fight language. I am telling you, observe. There is a joy. There is a hidden joy in letting your mind be at peace, as if like this might be strange, but for me there was a symbiosis of my identity, um, and my body with uh, the effort of how energy is moving in space. And when I say a symbiosis, it's as if I began respecting my mind. I realized, like in my youth, the concept, I had missed the concept. And so I ended up as a very stubborn kind of, you know, this is pre 2011, I was, ooh. I remember in my poetry, I wrote it, those were the cloudy days. Where the fog of ignorance had made me miss out on being who I really was in those moments. And I'm telling you, that person who is trying to be something that they are not, um, as a sort of escapism from who they are, I am telling you, there's not where can a person escape to in this life? You see that the joy of living is in not just how the self is in reality, but how your awareness is the reality. And that's the ultimatum of experience. And when I feel I've dived into this concept enough, then I'll I think maybe like after 200 more talks, I feel like I've left enough um, elder scrolls about this. It's fascinating, guys. We're intelligent beings. Our intelligence has to do with exposure, it has to do with the workings of the mind. And if we have something to pursue, we have to consider the unknown. And so it's like I remember animating kind of a story about Columbus when Columbus was a little kid and his mother wouldn't let him outside of the house. The mother was scared, so the kid Columbus never left the house. And Columbus would come to his mother. It's like, Mom, I want to get out of the house. There's a window to the house. Like, I can see outside. I want to go outside. And like Columbus's mother would be like, No, it's too dangerous, Columbus. You can't. You know. And Columbus is like, I gotta get out of here. And then he got out of the house one day. And imagine when he got out of the house, then he suddenly appeared in like the in the nation or wherever he was. And so then he was like, okay, what's beyond the ocean? So it was as if a progression of wanting to see authentically, kind of the same way an astronaut would feel taking a first step on the moon, like to see what the beyond is, to see what the evolution advancement of your civilization is while you're alive. And it is not built as if by the hands of master sculptors. It is built by the hands of those who just cared for it, maybe like 30%. There's this civilization of ours. It's at least good comedy. Oh man. Because, guys, just think about it. Like, I remember seeing a debate between an atheist and a theist, and I don't know if it was, I heard this from Richard Dawkins or Christopher Hitchens. I think both of them mentioned it at some point, where one guy came up to, I think it was Richard Dawkins. One guy came up to Richard Dawkins and he's like, "How can you deny the living God when I'm experiencing the living God?" And he was a Christian man. I think it was kind of Irish Christian man was asking Richard Dawkins, or Scottish Christian man, someone like that. You know. And Richard Dawkins looks at him and says, "If you were born," like Richard Dawkins goes beast mode. Sorry, guys, just a second. Okay. And so, guys, Richard Dawkins just like he gives his Richard Dawkins is a man who's like he's saying his truth. He's an honest person. He's a very honest person, I feel. But anyways, Richard Dawkins looks at this man and he says, if you were born in, for example, in Viking times, you'd be believing in Wotan, and Thor. He doesn't say Thor. He says, and then he says, if you were born in kind of Islamic place, you'd be kind of believing in Allah. If you were born in India, you'd be believing in I don't remember who he says, some like another god, and he says that you're believing in fabrications. He's pretty much telling this guy like you are seeing something, and another person in another world is seeing something else. So how could both of you be seeing the same thing? You know, and this the guy, and it's a good argument. I'm gonna give Richard Dawkins that it's a good argument, but um, let me tell you, if there was kind of uh, this, if the spirit of philosophy was in the room, what it would say. So you would see the same way we can say, yeah, these things are different. The subjective realms of people are different. It's kind of like you can say that for all personalities. So if you really look at what Richard Dawkins said there, it means, how can I tell you? It means the linguistic simulation is hollow. He's saying the subjective realm is hollow. So rather caring about, whoa, this human being's mind animated a relationship with the cosmos where behind it, like rather than it being a psychological wonder, and not in a derogatory way, but just in the way that man's mind colors the world in through narrative. So in the 6th century, that's how they colored out. That's how much language had evolved. You know, in modern times, language has evolved in various ways, and the relationship of objectivity with subjectivity is symbol attribution, and that symbol attribution is hovering in space. So ultimately, what Richard Dawkins, I feel, suggested is that if the person believes in a different God, if his vision of a God in one country and another person, their vision of a God in another country are hollow, they're artificial. So that means every person's vision of a self is hollow. You know what I mean? That means it's all fabricated. So that means we're nothing. That means it's kind of like it's a materialistic interpretation on a subject. Just the concept of like a thought, it's hollow. But for me, it's like that's just as how far we've come so far, you know. I feel there's consciousness. The reason it can't be measured because it's a dynamism. It's like our the moment we go to measure it, it's like a surfboard on a wave. It's like only in certain states we can find relativity to it. And the human being is a growing being. Like your physical body is not audiences here. This thought. Uh, because children, like I'm telling you, these talks that I give, on some level it's a kind of my own project that I'm just sharing with the world, but on another level I feel it's like, trust me, it's like your own mind is your inner realms are um, are a wonder of a lifetime that only you can see. So what's more fascinating than seeing an interesting world is seeing how behind your eyes you're being one. Ultimately, all these dimensions that I shared, the zero, one to infinity, there is an unknown presence that will always be unknown. It is like the central unknown we require to know. It's as if the unknown is the foundation of our knowledge. We wouldn't want to know things if everything was known. So exploration's purpose is the unknown. So the meaning of life, once the person wonders, wow, that advancement of the civilization can go so fast that what if it's like we can't no longer contemplate it through just speaking about it. It has to only be experienced. So it's kind of like individual experiencers discovering it's all collective, a collective presence of existence. That means one person can't go to another, like person A can't go to person B and be like, I exist more than you, man. You can't. And really, it's like how the attention is held in the moment. I find that we can't be, like, this is the issue of society, that it's requiring only one sort of role. It's wanting one kind of thing. It's like the educational system. So let me tell you what that means. That means there's 8 billion people and with 8 billion different DNA. And does it make sense that one type of educational system works for these 8 billion different eyes? So you see, no. So it means that it has to be a contribution of the development of knowledge. So the educational system should be like this tower that is endlessly being built towards the sky. So in other words, knowledge gets an opportunity to progress, and I find the greatest way it can when we have the elegance to acknowledge the inner realms. Can you imagine two people getting into an argument and suddenly one of them being like, "Hey, man, I know you're right now in your inner realms. You're feeling chaos, but don't bring it out into the outer realms." And that person who's angry, imagine suddenly like calms down and realizes, yeah, they are seeing the fire in the moment, you know. So that's what I'm saying. It's like whether we like it or not, there's evolution. Just like biological cells completely change, your ideological constitution changes in accordance to the experiences you have, and not just how you have them, how you place them in the puzzle of your life, how you place the piece in peace, or how. Let's see how else we're going, or how you, or how the missing piece is peace. There's a quote from Tilopa. Let me see if I can find Tilopa, this Tibetan sage, says, let go of what has passed, let go of what may come, let go of what is happening now. Don't try to figure anything out. Don't try to make anything happen. Relax right now and rest. That means, can you believe the greatest meditation was just to rest? I'm going to go into a quote tunnel of Tilopa quotes, guys. This guy has some profound quotes, this Tibetan sage. No thought, no reflection, no analysis, no cultivation, no intention, let it settle itself. Stop all physical activity and sit naturally at ease. Remain silent and let sound be like an echo. Do not think about anything, look at experience beyond thought. Open minded like space. Let go of control and stop and rest at ease in that state. Awareness without projection is the greatest meditation. Train and develop like this, and you will come to the deepest awakening. Tilopa says the appearances of the world are not the problem. It's clinging to them that causes suffering. And that's exactly it. Clinging on to, it's like the subject, it's like your inner realm wants the outer realm to be in a certain way, but you have to realize you're clinging on. You're clinging on to the image of your suffering internally. So be mindful of that. Anyways, let's go. Let's keep going with the quote tunnel. Tilopa says obsessive use of meditative disciplines or perennial study of scripture and philosophy will never bring forth this wonderful realization. This truth, which is natural to awareness, because the mind that desperately desires to reach another realm or level of experience inadvertently ignores the basic light that constitutes all experience. And guys, I agree with this because what it means is that it's a stop. It's literally the simulation stopping. So if the simulation has to stop in order for the ultimate to be realized, it means as long as you're searching, it can't be stopped. And if there is, I say there's two traps in philosophy: the nihilistic trap and the enlightenment trap. And the reason they're traps is because they're both escapisms. That means if you want to get something out of life, then you'll kind of limit your life. If you want to just take one, like, how can I say it, it's more of like progress has a presence that must be honored more than self obsession, that more than the self's kind of urge to continue. That means because we're conscious of our evolution, we don't have to just evolve in the same way, you know. Anyways, let's keep going. Tilopa says it's not the appearance that binds you, it's the attachment to the appearance that binds you. Tilopa says no thought. Oh, I read this one. Tilopa says realizing that nothing can last, that all is as dreamlike illusion. And guys, it's not like I could totally see how they would say life is like a dream because you kind of awaken into it as a person, and then it ends at some point. It ends. That means regardless of what people are doing, at some point life ends like a candle where its wax is ended. So what's crucial is how the light was illuminating the room of reality. So once you care for the quality of life increasing rather than you kind of finding some paradise of an image of it, then it becomes not only more natural and real, it just becomes, you suddenly discover your own pace. And discovering your own kind of pace of how experience is flowing for you is synonymous with finding your writer's voice or your inner voice. You suddenly discover what you are, and it becomes a source of energy for you. That means this is how you can tell, like, if a person wakes up and who they are to themselves energizes them, that's the efficient self. If the image they have of themselves is reducing their energy levels, then that is like, it's like, why have a box over your head, you know? Tilopa says, don't recall, don't imagine, don't think, don't examine, don't control, rest. In other words, he's saying, chill. Tilopa says, it is not the outer objects that entangle. That quote, this thing he said here has such a poetic marvel in it. One touch can dissipate the accumulated darkness of 1,000 eons. That means one touch can change the world, can change the value of the world. One effort. Tilopa says, cut the mind at its roots and rest in naked awareness. And the root of the mind, I believe, is language. It's how the duality is like. It's like how our bodies or how objects are in space. It's like subjects are in space. So the root of your mind is space. um, yeah, and these are some quotes from Tibetan sages. I'll tell you one more. It's from Milarepa. This is a different guy. He says, when you run after your thoughts, you're like a dog chasing a stick. Every time a stick is thrown, you run after it. Instead, be like a lion who, rather than chasing after the stick, turns to face the thrower. One only throws a stick at a lion once. You see, guys, life has the beautiful thing about life is it's moving. It's just a grand happening. I remember once I was confronted by a family member to about how I perceive the reality. And I remember saying that I see it as kind of like there's a wakefulness, and in this wakefulness, there everything is just moving. Everything that we consider our desires, our suffering, it's just motion, you know? Just motion, and this it's a movement of design. It's like the world is living geometry. It's just shapes that come and go. And so it's I saw it as this grand movement. I remember I in 2011 I had a very profound experience sitting on a rock in the middle of a river and seeing the water of the river just move forward, right? And just that motion, just how my whole identity is consciousness in motion or being conscious of motion. So there's a rawness. It's like the cool thing is because we evolved from the jungles, there's a hypersensitivity that emerges in emergencies. But when one can access that hyper sense of emergency, that hyper intelligence, not intelligence, I don't want to say intelligence. That's shaping it a bit too far. I would say it's a field. It's like wilderness is a way that the moment is animating with an intensity that is not of just the energy of just the body's level. It's an intensity, and intensity appears with importance. So the more something is important for you, the more your true intelligence is there. I'm gonna say, you know. By the way, guys, feel free to um, ask me about what I'm saying here. If there's something I'm saying that is vague, comes across as vague to you, um, which could potentially be I don't know 82% of everything I'm saying. No, I'm joking. Ultimately, when I entertain Rene Descartes' mind-body dualism. So for me, knowledge and the unknown are just if where my attention goes. It can my attention can be in a state where shape is in the symbol at like the okay here. If we say the mind is a processor of data and it's receiving sensory data in motion, the way it's kind of like uh, something's a sort of play occurring in a spotlight. The spotlight is like the awareness, the play is like the forces of reality animating. I would kind of say it like it's like we've been just identifying as beings with just the matter in the room. With just, if you imagine just for a second, like, okay, let's go along with this mind being a data processor. The way it's processing the data is it seems to be the moment it recognizes something, it stamps it with a symbol. And that symbol is the subject. So the moment I see a cup and connect the word cup to this object, then anytime I see something that resembles like this, the mind will suddenly evokes the symbol attributed. So it's like the data processing is symbol attribution. You know, I chose this picture, the wallpaper for this talk, because I felt eventually it's kind of like when a person drives a vehicle, they see further ahead through the front view window. So similarly, we as conscious beings, as a conscious civilization, if we take the physical part, like as if we start considering there's a body to our civilization and there's a mind healthy. In other words, the advancement of all infrastructure on the surface of the earth, which ultimately would mean it would have to go even beyond the earth. So just like that ship, there's probably like cities that can lift off into the air. Let me see if I can find that picture. Okay, I can't. Anyways, so what it is that we want the body of our civilization, let's say civilization 2.0. I've talked about this. Civilization 2.0, we want the body of it to be healthy, but also its mind. So how do we make the mind of 8 billion beings who are for let's say assuming collectivity? We have to, as some scholars have said, introduce a new narrative and a new ethos. So we have to look at how vision is being conducted and to somehow make the symbol and pattern recognition kind of we have to process data differently, and it has to occur with inner depth. So it's not about just how long you live; it is how you live in that time. The quality. It's as if do you want a kind of coach flight or a first class flight? Because for me in this life, I've realized it's like the mind. It's not that you need to, throw a stick at a lion, but the mind is something that it once it becomes content with its limitations, then it has no problem attempting the limitless. That means then you suddenly your mind opens up to what I call this concept of endless endurance. So that means something is so important for you in your inner realms that it doesn't matter what's happening outside, just the instantaneity of that inner realm. It's like even though it's not projected simultaneously, instantly, but it's just because your attention is being in that inner moment, the outer moment may suddenly intensify and resemble that. So what does that mean? That means it's like a child, crying for its mother because it's thirsty, and suddenly from the earth water arising from underneath its feet. In other words, it's the you can say macro archetype that suddenly the micro archetype finds itself, so its perception on its individuality is defined by how the collective moves. So if you're a member of the tribe, you're being defined by the general vibe of the tribe. Reality requires an effort, just like our caveman ancestors, to step out of the cave. It's an art. It's the art of uh, uh, experiencing the journey through worlds. That means life became so much more colorful for me when I noticed, oh my God, every moment is a unique. Like this, the neurology is there's a change. And so to study change, I came into the resolution that if the intelligence can conceive that it is the matter in the room, it can also conceive it is the edgeless space. So that means your mind is made of sky, your body is made of earth. Your mind is like the sky. What does the abstract self imply? As attention emerged through matter, Sorry, guys, sudden phone call. um, what was I saying? As attention emerged through matter, uh, attention stabilized as a character in a story. Pretty much, uh, objective evolution led to a subjective awareness. This subjective awareness, this is the abstract self, and the abstract self, the best thing it can be is living artwork. As Rumi says, be living poetry. That means don't just write poetry, live life uh, uh, with an access to its mastery. In other words, in regards to inner authorization, the moment you realize the within and the without are codependent and witness at the same time, it's as if then there is no. You realize it's like you're not just like not only that any other idea of self could be in the place of the idea of self you have, but just the freedom of the emergence of the new. So kind of like that, as people begin studying the nature of abstraction, the nature of subjectivity, the nature of a invisible mind, then we will require not to only evolve our languages. So I can say it's like the abstract self implies uh, the presence of a witnessing dimension. In other words, the civilization is becoming more aware of itself, and itself is in the domain of free will is the abstract self, because that's the only way you can distinguish it. You're pretty much not a self if there's no control. This is why too much chaos, the self is non-existent. Too much order, the self cannot even be itself. So in one dynamic, it's unconditional. In one dynamic, it's super conditional. It's only the freedom of both that allows the I find the being to kind of, again, as Rumi said, like the chaos and order become the wings of the bird. So when chaotic things happen, you're like, okay, this be the self that you only have one lifetime to be. Our minds are solar powered. Our thoughts. Because abstraction requires a reality to relate to, and reality is accessible in light. So, what fascinates me is how the person can sleep, the body is physically inactive, the eyes are closed, but find themselves in a dream where they're moving in the dream and the world is different. So that is just a huge suggestion that when the senses are more settled, like the ripples of a pond, the more it's like when the ripples of the pond settle, there's a clarity of the sky. So I find when the person sleeps, the moment when they go to deep sleep before they find themselves in the dream, that deep sleep is like the last ripple of the pond. And when the last ripple of the pond uh, kind of settles, it's as if from a pure space, from this a pure zero dimension, there can arise the subjective. So what I'm saying is that um, this may be a strange statement, but we are space incarnate as matter. We're space that matters, you know. So, anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope this talk was helpful. And I'll tell you this: the sages said you could do two things in life. That means any human being, wherever you are in this world that you're hearing me, and I have no idea how far my voice will echo. But you can only do two things, and that is to trust the moment or distrust it. The sages would say this. And if you distrust your moment, you have denied the heaven behind your eyes. But if you trust the moment, because without trust, how can you hold the tool in your hand? How can you use your mind without trusting it? So you must stabilize through a direct experiential trust of your moment of being to be able to be present with your world. And once you're comfortable being present as an existential being, then you can comfortably move around and navigate in three-dimensional space, or even we can say, if the fourth dimension is time, and time has been incredibly held in secular light, so I can say that the fifth dimension, uh, um, the abstract self is in the fifth dimension. And what the fifth dimension is how, just like we say the fourth dimension is, okay, so let me say it like this. In We have a person in three-dimensional space. Now that person on one day is in that space, then suddenly tomorrow, the next day goes into that same spot. So let's say, just entertain me here. Let's say the time is the only fourth dimension. That means time separates those two moments. So we say time is the fourth dimension, you know? So now the reason I'm saying the fifth dimension is subjectivity, abstraction, the subjective realms, is because the awareness to two different times is a witness. So here, I'll say it like this. The sixth dimension is an attributeless witness. The fifth dimension is an abstract self. Then from the fourth dimension down below, we can use the way the world has, science has defined the four dimensions. So this is where I can say my perception on dimensions may walk a different crossroad than mainstream theoretical physics, because I don't know how scientists, like I'll probably look into it, but I don't know beyond the fourth dimension how scientists have conceived it. I think at most they're saying it's inconceivable, but I feel it's internal. So we must care for our inner technologies, and also for we must care for our inner technologies as much as our outer technologies. That means not don't only just trust your mind, but learn to enjoy how every breath is how you're animate. Like there's a joy in living, you know? Or let me say it better, there's a joy in being alive in a world that is alive. That means it's like I remember hearing one person at a house party, and it was definitely one of those house parties where intoxication was the theme. And I remember this person, he suddenly stood up and he said, like the conversation was deep, and he said, uh, like it was a group of us sitting there, and he said it's people who had lied to me, and he had this hatred for the world that had deceived them, the society that had deceived them, and it's like on some level, to it's as if that person couldn't still discriminate between how how movement has no explanation at times. Do you see? That's the challenge of the hard problem of consciousness, that we can't explain uh, the unique emergence of a movement, a phenomenological movement. So, anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope this talk was helpful. Writing is the best. Like that's something I recommend to people. Just write, and sometimes what like write a question that is important for you, and then attempt to answer it yourself, and write both of that and see what it would be like. You may fascinate yourself. Much blessings and namaste.